Hi, how you doing? In this video, I'd like to talk about a subject that is quite close to my heart. And in some ways, this is a reply to a video Matt Easton made on his channel, Scholar Gladiatoria, fairly recently. And that's comparing HEMA and traditional martial arts to MMA, mixed martial arts. I have a slightly different perspective to Matt because I have trained MMA. And when opportunity allows, I do still train with mixed martial artists. I train in Catch Wrestling, and I have done Brazilian Jiu-jitsu classes, and I fully intend to do more. And I think that gives me a slightly different perspective to Matt. But there are a couple of points that he makes that seem to be fairly commonly held beliefs that I'm not entirely convinced are necessarily true. The first is that he says, and it's the way it's described, that in MMA, you're in a safe environment within the cage. And he says this because there aren't gangs of people, there aren't weapons, the floor isn't covered in broken glass. And to a degree, yeah, that's a very fair point. The floor isn't covered in broken glass, you're only ever going to be fighting one person at once. And the floor of the cage is relatively smooth. Does that make it a safe environment? No, absolutely not. Because in general, there's another person in there who's very skilled, who's trying very hard to hurt you. You may be able to control the fight to a degree to suggest that you stay in the centre. You may end up backed up against the wall. You may end up curled up on the floor in the corner of the wall and floor, trying very hard to prevent serious pain and injury. So, no, it isn't a safe environment by any stretch of the imagination. It isn't a direct analogue for the street, absolutely not. But in the same way that training in HEMA with our protective gear on it in a nice smooth floored training hall and our blunt weapons isn't a perfect analogue for sword fighting, but it's pretty good. And one does train for the other. No, you can't train to roll around on broken glass in a safe way. But what you can do is train to deal with situations where you are on the ground as effectively as possible in a safe manner to allow you to be as effective as possible if you end up doing those things in a place that isn't as safe for you. And that leads me on to the next point, where Matt suggests that the worst thing you can do in a real-life encounter is go to the ground. And in a big way, I very much agree with Matt. You're absolutely right. Going to the ground is not what you want to do in a real-world encounter. It does put you in a situation where you have less control over what happens. You can escape far less easily if you're already on the floor. But in the vast majority of cases, you don't have a choice as to whether you're going to be fighting from the floor or not. And I think that's the big thing that people miss. They seem to think that if they're fighting against somebody who's a skilled wrestler or grappler, that they're going to stand a chance. And they're not. I can't stress this enough. If you have not got onto some mats with somebody who is a very skilled grappler or wrestler, then you don't have the faintest idea how hard it is to even survive that encounter. And if you watch people grappling, you watch people training, what happens is they roll around a bit, one of them taps, they separate and they start again. In wrestling, we tend to start from standing, and there are throws and takedowns that involve coming to the ground and then either submissions or pins. In Brazilian Jiu-jitsu, often you start from kneeling or sitting, and you try and fight to a position of dominance. And there's a tap, you start again. And people seem to misunderstand what that actually means. That tap is your way of saying, you've beaten me. You got me to a position where I cannot escape. And it goes further than that. It's not just that I cannot escape, it's that you've got me to a position where I cannot escape, and you have dominated this fight so much that in reality you could have killed me. Now it may well be that you've got me in a position in an arm lock, you've got me in a straight arm bar, and at that point you could break my arm. or dislocate my elbow. Now, let's not get confused about this. If I'm in a fight with somebody and they break my arm or dislocate my elbow, then they've won that fight. Because, you know, firstly, if they could get me in that situation when I have both arms, how good do you think I'm going to be at fighting them off when I've only got one arm? So, a tap is more than just a, well done, mate. It's a, in this instance, you could have killed me. And it sounds like I'm bigging this up a bit, but honestly, try it. Get out there with a skilled grappler. Go along to a wrestling class, to a BJJ class. Get on the mats with somebody and see what happens. It's a bit of an eye-opener. It's like you are drowning. There is nothing you can do. Absolutely nothing. Every single thing you do with your arms or legs or body or head puts you in a worse situation. And it's hard to kind of get that across to somebody without them having experienced it. You always think, oh, well, you know, there are no groin strikes or eye gouges or fish hooks allowed. So, you know, if I were willing to fight dirty, I'd stand a chance. No, you wouldn't. Not at all. I've wrestled against some very skilled wrestlers. And I've rolled with some very skilled BJJ practitioners. So, excuse me, that's my phone. And the one thing that is common to all of these encounters is that however much I knew what was happening, I could do nothing about it. And you can often tell that they're setting you up for something, but you don't know what it is until it goes on. So get yourself out there against a BJJ black belt, or a professional MMA fighter, or a highly skilled catch-as-catch-can wrestling instructor, and see. Because the fact is, if they want you on the ground, you're on the ground. And the best thing you can possibly do in order to stop that from happening is to grapple, is to train in grappling, is to train in BJJ, or to train in wrestling, or if you're focused entirely on European systems, train in ringing, train in abrazare, train in English folk wrestling, but train in grappling, because you do not have a chance when you get up against these guys. And that's just looking at skill. The other thing that people seem to forget when they're talking about MMA versus traditional martial arts is traditional martial arts. We go along, we go to a village hall, we get our gear out, we train for an hour or so, and we do that once or twice a week, and we go away and we go, yay, look at us, aren't we great? We fight for fun. No. In MMA, these guys fight for fun. And the kind of people that I'm talking about, the kind of people like Louis King, Chai Lewis Parry, Danny Brennan, Matt Powell, there's a lot of fighters out there that I've been lucky enough to get on the mats with. People like James Thompson, Colossus. These guys train every day, 2, maybe sometimes even 3 times a day. And their level of strength, their level of skill, and their level of stamina are mind-blowing. It's a bit like me saying, I'm pretty good at running, so I'm going to go to and race against Tyson Gay or Usain Bolt or any of these guys. It's just delusional to think that you can be at their level. You can't, and the only way you can do it is by training the way they train. So my basic point is, unless you've experienced it, you don't really know. Get out there, give it a go, get grappling. You don't know what you're capable of doing until you train. And the training process itself will teach you a huge amount about who you are. It will teach you a huge amount of humility. And it'll let you see what a small pond you're currently swimming in at the moment. Anyway, I'll shut up now. I hope this has been of some interest to you. And I'll see you around. Take care.